Right guys, discs and pads on this car as promised. It's a really quick thing on this car. Okay, first of all, obviously get your car jacked up. As we all know, use your ratchet to or impact driver if you're lucky to have one or can borrow one, to take the wheel off. And as I said before, always put the wheel under the car to keep yourself safe. So if the car falls off the jack, you will be safe. All right, there's a few nuts here. You've got a piston to take off, which holds your pads in place, which is a nut up here and a bolt up here and a bolt down here. Okay, they're the first two that we need to take out. And then there's a caliper mounting bolt, which are two at the back here. There's one there and there's one underneath. We'll get this out of the way and then I'll show you the caliper mounting bolt. It's quite straightforward on this. All right, we do need to push the piston in because we're putting new pads. Easiest way is, while it's still in place, just pull on the actual piston. All I'm doing is pulling this bit, not this bit. I'm pulling this, which is pushing the piston in behind. So if you have a look now, it's a bit loose. And then we'll get our 12mm on these anti-clockwise. Just give it a tap and it will come undone, like so. Okay, take that one out. So that's one bolt out. Okay, keep your bolts safe. And then I'm going to take the bottom one out, which is here. Same thing. There you go, that's loose. You can do that by hand, it's only finger tight. And that's two, putting my bolt safe. Now you slide the piston out of the brakes. Okay, and if you have a look, here's your piston. This is what pushes out and makes the brake stop. To put new pads in, this needs to be retracted all the way back. All right, to do that, easiest way is just put a bar on it, just squeeze it, and if you have a look, you'll see the piston is actually going back. Okay, just keep pushing a nice firm pressure, and as you see, it's going back. If I reposition myself just so I can push on it, as I push, I'm just pushing it against the shock, but just push it, and as you see, with a bit of firm pressure, just keep the pressure on. It'll just keep going back until it's more or less flat. Now we can get new pads in there when we need to. Right, moving on. If we put that round the back there, we don't want that falling because it can break the line here, so it needs to be sat somewhere safe so it can't fall. And that's good there, there's no weight on it. Okay, now we need to remove the pads. Okay, these pads just slide in, so essentially this has just been slid in. I am going to use a screwdriver just to help it out because it's been in there a little while, but as you can see, these would normally just slide in here like so. Just push in and slide in at the top and bottom and go back into place, but we're replacing them, so let's get them out. This one out, they're actually good pads still, but we've got the MTEC ones now, so we don't need them. All right, that's two out. Now we need to use, I believe it's a 15. Yep, so 15 at the back here. There's two, so there's one here at the top and there's one there at the bottom. They essentially hold a caliper mount. This is what holds your caliper in place. To be able to get this disc off, these two bolts need to come out. They will be tight, and the way I get these out is by putting my spanner on, getting a hammer and just giving it a tap, just like that. Just a couple of taps. That one's loose. If I do the one at the bottom, get it on there, couple of taps, and that one's loose also. Okay, now we just keep going with those and get these undone basically. I will do it with a spanner to show you that it still doesn't take very long. Even if you have just got a spanner set to do this, you can do that. I'll take the bottom one out first. Like so. Just keep going, and eventually it'll just come out. It'll be a lot easier to put back in. And if you have a look around the back, you can see I'm just undoing the bolt there. That bolt's just coming out. Put the caliper mount. And that now allows this mount is now loose, this whole mount. Okay, keep your bolt safe. Just going to do the top one. Guys, if you've got a ratchet, just use it. It'll be a lot easier. I have got a ratchet, but I just wanted to show you that you can do it just using a spanner. Just keep going, it will come out eventually. If your brakes have been on a while, it's going to be a little bit tighter. Obviously the piston had been changed on this. You can see the pistons were new, but the caliper mounts have clearly never been off. And it's quite tight. Our main problem is we can't change the discs without taking these off. I think there's a few cars out there that you can, but this definitely ain't one of them. It's starting to loosen up now, finally. As you see, even if I'm just using a spanner, we've still only been working on this a minute or so on this bolt, so it will come out. Just keep going. You see that one's loosened up now. Now the caliper mount will come off. So essentially it just comes off like so. Okay, for those of you who haven't done brakes before, just put it on the floor next to it. So when you pick it back up, it goes back in exactly the same place. Because for some reason, people get confused how they're meant to go back on. But that is how they come off. After that, we take the disc off, your old disc. Okay, and this is where it gets more fun, because now we get to put our MTEC race discs on it with drilled and groove spec. Get our caliper mount back on, get the bolt, got our top bolt in first, if I can see that. That's our top bolt lined up. Let's now line up our bottom bolt. That's our bottom bolt lined up, and now we just do them back up. Let me do these up and I'll be back with you. So I've got these tight, not very tight, but tight. I've done them up. As you can see, they're still moving. Now what I do is I get it nice and really tight, okay? And then I just get my hammer, just give it a tap a few times. I know that's tight. I've never had a brake caliper mount come undone doing it like that. Obviously, doing it up. And that is absolutely solid. So the two mounts are now solid. They'll never come apart. Okay. Now again, we've got to put the brake discs in. You can spend a bit of time cleaning all of this up. To be honest, on this one, it's not dirty, but sometimes these do get really rusty, these runners. So you definitely can clean them up a little bit. Okay. So now I'll just put my back one in, and then I'll show you how I've done that on the front. Bear with me. It can be a bit fiddly, these things sometimes. Okay, that's the back one in. Now the front one is exactly the same. So essentially all I'm doing is pushing the pad in, so it's gone in on the front here, and then pushing it in at the bottom and top, essentially, so it just runs inside that runner there, like that one and that one. Now if you have a look, they're both sitting perfectly flush in there. Okay, you do need a little bit of copper grease on these. Stops any brake squeal. So what you do, you just put a tiny bit on your finger so you can change your glove, put it on the back of the pad. Do not get it onto the brake disc or onto the pad. Okay, essentially, if you have a look here, I'm just putting it on this part of the pad. Okay, like so. Right, change my glove over. You obviously can use something to put that on there. Now, the only thing left to do is put the piston back on, and you're good to go. When you are putting new discs on, when you take them out of the box, they're always going to be covered in a film of oil. Okay, this is to protect them so they don't rust in transit or something, I think. But from my experience, they're always covered in oil. When you're putting the piston back on, don't spin it and then put it back on. Make sure it's just a nice curve and it goes on. But going back onto the disc, clean the disc with brake cleaner before you put it onto the car. That's really, really important. Okay, so that's the top bolt and that's the bottom bolt back in. Okay, we'll get our 10 inch you wish, 12 ratchet, and we'll do these back up like so. Sometimes when you're doing these, this here wants to spin. Let's see if it happens with this. If it does spin, it's normally a 19 on these, I believe, but at the moment it's doing up. Actually, there you go. So that just span a little bit. You don't want that to spin, it will damage the rubber. So hold it in place while you're doing that up, and you'll see the piston pulling, and it's done up nice and tight. You can over tighten these, so just go really nice and tight and just feel for it, basically, is what I say. Now we'll get the bottom one in, and again, let's do that up. That's also nice and tight. Sometimes, people, when you're doing these up, this will spin and you just can't stop it from spinning with your hand. It just wants to spin anyway. Again, there's a rubber here and it damages it. So what you would do, if that was the case, I would put a spanner on here, find the right size. This one's a 19. I put the spanner on there, hold it, and then I would do this up. But in this case, that wasn't a problem and it didn't do that. Right, so essentially we've already changed the brake discs and pads. As easy as that. There's your old disc and there's your new drilled and grooved discs. Let's get the wheel back on and see how she looks. We'll just put a couple and see how it looks. That'll do for now. Right, put the bolts on, let's see how she looks. And look at that. Sports brake discs and pads within minutes.